Okay, so this is the final part of this tutorial on making trees for CryEngine, and what we're going to do is to put this tree into CryEngine. So I've done a few things just to get started with this. I've just made a little scene in CryEngine, just scattering some rocks and some grass around. This is the grass from my tutorial on making grass, so you can follow that if you want to see how that was done. But there's nothing special about this scene at all. I've just scattered some stuff around so that we have something a bit nicer to look at. I've probably gone a bit overkill on scattering the rocks, but anyway, the other thing that I've done is I have just saved all of these as CryTiffs. So I've made a new folder and I've saved, I've made a bark texture and I've made a spec and a normal map for that, and I've saved my branches in there as well. One thing that I should do quickly is to pad this properly. So if I just grab my everything in the alpha and then delete that out of there, then a good way to pad this is just to do a copy of it, and then you can just do a filter, blur, and go to blur, and then just upload copies of that, merge those together, and that'll do, to be honest, for the padding. So I'll just make another layer underneath now, and I'll just fill that with some of that green colour. That'll be fine for that, that should be plenty of padding around the edges there. You can see that because we used that blur, we're getting the colours off the edge of this. Okay, so I'll just save that as CryTiff. Oops, there. And when I save this as a CryTiff as well, I just want to make sure that I have RGB and alpha in there. Okay. And other than that, I've just gone through and I've just saved all of these CryTiffs. So I've just pulled that off CG Textures, and that's just a 512 by 512 image. Right. So the next thing we want to do is set up our material. So first of all, let's give this tree a name. So let's call it Oak Tree. I'm going to call it Oak Tree 2 because I've just done this with Oak Tree 1. And I'm going to go to, in fact, next thing to do is to save this into the into your CryEngine folder. So let's put it into Natural Trees Oak, and you can see I've got Oak 1. So I'll call this one Oak 2. And call that Oak Tree 2. The next thing I'll do is I'll make the collision mesh for this. So I'm just going to do a shift copy of it. Make sure you copy it as a copy, because of what we did with the branches earlier, you might have this set to instance. So just make sure you don't, and you can just call that something like Oak Tree Proxy. Then I'm just going to isolate that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of the, we don't need any of these leaf parts in our collision mesh, so I'll just delete those. And to do that, I'm just going to select the second ID, because everything on the second ID should be those leaves, so I can delete those. Then I'll just come in and grab a load of edges. So I'll just get all of these edges here, and then just use the dot ring, so ring every other edge, and I can delete those. So that'll do for a collision mesh. Now we can unisolate that. So that's our collision mesh, and that's our tree. Right, so what we want to do is we want to set up a multi-sub material. So if you get a new material and set it from standard to multi-sub, and we can discard that old material, and then our first material is going to be a standard material, and I'm going to set it to a CryText shader, physicalize, and physicalize proxy no draw, and you can make that red if you want, or something like that, so that it's easy to see what it is, and we'll call that proxy. So this is our collision material. Our second material, I'm just going to copy that in because it's faster, so I'll unphysicalize that, send that back to default, CryText shader. I'll make this one a kind of browny colour because it's going to be our bark, and I'll copy that into the third one, and this is going to be the leaf. So again, CryText shader, all this stuff off. I'll just make that green. The only reason I'm making these different colours is so they're a bit easier to see in Max what I'm doing. And I'll get rid of all the other materials in there. So I've just got my proxy in 1, my bark in 2, and my leaf in 3. Right, I can now put that material into CryEngine. So I'm just going to go to my CryEngine exporter, and then I'm going to make sure that I've got this multi-sub material selected, and I'm going to do from max to create material, and that will just bring up CryEngine and it'll ask me where I want to save it. So I'm going to save it into natural trees oak, and I've made one, so I'll call this oak mat 2. So if you look at my material editor, that's set up now, kind of. Okay, so back to 3ds Max, and right, what we want to do is we want to get the proxy, we want to attach the proxy as a child to the main tree. So if I go to if I select both of them, so I've selected both the proxy, you can see I've got 2 objects selected, and I go to my schematic view, and I can just zoom in on those. So I want this oak tree to be the parent of this proxy, so I'll just drag if you select the connect and then just connect the proxy to the oak tree. So now if I select the oak tree, the proxy will move with it. Right, what I want to do now is to make sure that my IDs are set correctly. So first of all, let's select both of these and put our new multi-sub material onto them. Right, if I select the actual tree, so not the proxy but the tree, and everything that was previously in, so if I go to element mode, everything that was previously in ID 2, I actually want to now be ID 3, and everything that was previously in ID 1, I want to be in ID 2. So 2 is now set to the bark, you can see, because it's this yellow, and the leaves are set to green, which you can see there. So that's that one done. The other one is the proxy. So the proxy, I just want to make sure that everything, so I can do select all and just make sure all of them are set to ID 1. I also want to make sure that everything is in one smoothing group, in smoothing group 1. Otherwise you might get problems with your proxy. Okay, so we can save that. And I think we're ready to export this now. So if we go to our CryEngine exporter, okay, and let's just add the tree to it. So add selected, just with the oak tree selected, not with, you don't need to drag through both of them, just the oak tree because the other one's parented to it. Make sure export file per node is turned on, and then hit export nodes, and hopefully you won't get any errors. You might get that degenerate texture coordinates. You don't need to worry about that, it's just because we UV'd the bark in a bit of a haphazard way, but as long as it looks okay, it'll be fine. So if we come across the CryEngine now, and we can just test this, I'm just going to go into brush, and I'm going to drag and drop. So I should be able to find, this is where I saved mine. Obviously find where you saved yours. You might need to hit reload, and I'll just drag and drop this oak tree in. Okay, so it's come in on its side. So chances are we just need to reset our X form, and when we've done that, the proxy's gone to its side. So what we'll do is, let's just go to our schematic view and just disconnect these, so unlink them. Then I'm going to move this back into place and reset the X form on that, and reset the X form on this, and collapse that back to an editable poly. Now let's just check that our pivots are right. Okay, now I'll just connect these back together like that. So hopefully this time, if I select that and go to my CryEngine 3 exporter, hopefully it'll come in the right way round. Yeah, okay. Just to, well, let's just drop in and check that the proxy's working as well. So it's not. This does happen sometimes. I think if you come into the console and you go to P draw helpers and turn that on to 1, you can see that my proxy's come in. So that'll show the collision mesh, and you can see that it's come in on its side. This seems to happen quite a lot. It's something to do with the X forms. To fix it, I'm actually just going to get my physics proxy and rotate it round, I think it's that way, 90 degrees. This seems to happen to me a lot when I'm doing trees. It's only when I do trees. Let's see if that helps. So I'll need to delete that instance and bring in another one. Yeah, so you can see my proxy's now where it should be within the tree. So if I drop in, then I can't walk through the tree anymore, and I can shoot it and all that kind of stuff. So that's fixed it. That's a bit of a bodged way of doing it. I'm sure if I messed around with my X forms and stuff enough, I wouldn't need to rotate that. But for the moment, I'm not too bothered, and I'll keep it how it is. So let me just take that console command off. Just set that back to 0. Right. So the next thing we can do is let's put our material on, apply it to it. So just grab that oak material and assign to selection. And then I just need to plug everything into my textures. So first of all I can set this back to something normal, because this will come in with the colours that we set up in Max. So let's just set those back to normal colours. We'll do the bark first, so bring in the diffuse. There's that one. Let's bring in the speck. Just that one, and the bump. Just that one. And that doesn't look too bad, except for maybe the colours. So I should probably alter this in my diffuse map, really, but I'm just going to tweak the colour a little bit in here. And let's bring in some speck. That looks okay actually. What I would do is you probably want to play with this Fresnel setting for bark. You get a bit more, you tend to get quite a lot of kind of edge light on bark. So you can try playing with this. You see how if I increase the scale and take the bias down, I start to get this light around the rim here. Oops, don't know what I've done there. Yeah, start to get a light around the rim here. And you tend to get that with bark, so I'll turn that up a bit. Okay, so that's the bark done. And for the leaves, let's just bring in the diffuse and the normal, and sorry, that's the wrong place. Let's copy that into there, and the spec. Oh, annoys me when that happens. Okay, spec into that one. And what we want to do with the leaves is turn the shader onto vegetation. So where are we? Vegetation, there. And turn it two-sided on so that we can see both sides of it. Then we can turn the alpha test up a little bit to make it, to get rid of the transparent areas. Then it's just a case of tweaking things until it looks right. Let's turn the spec up first, so we'll have a bit of spec, like that, and our spec map doesn't actually look too bad at all already. I might want to increase the gloss a little bit on this, just until it looks like leaves. It depends what kind of leaves you're making, obviously. I think oak tree leaves are not very shiny. If it was something like sort of glossy ivy or something like that, I might want to turn the gloss up a bit more. But I think around here kind of looks like an oak leaf, so that's fine. The main thing I want to do now is there's just kind of some leaves are obviously a little bit transparent. Like if you held one up to a light, you can just about see through it. So let's first of all just turn leaves on, because these are leaves. So in the shader generation parameters, turn leaves on. What you can do is mess with this back diffuse scale, and that'll kind of alter how the light, or it'll give the effect as though light is coming through it. So I just want to balance that until, you know, if I turn it up here, it all looks a little bit wrong. Because there's really dark areas and really light areas. If I turn it right down, then I can just find a nice balance between the two. Okay, that's pretty much done. I think I'll alter the colour of this a little bit. I might even make it a little lighter as well. But that is pretty much there. I'm sure I'll want to tweak some of these settings a bit more as I start to use this, but it's not looking bad. The specula's looking okay on it. Bark's looking alright. I'm not quite sure I like the colour of it still, mate. See if I can just tweak that a little bit further. I think that's more what I'm after. Okay, so there we go. The last thing that I will do is just to make a nice kind of oak tree island. I'm just going to go into my vegetation. I'll make a new category. Call that trees, spelt wrong. And let's find our tree. So it's in trees, oak tree 2. And I just need to make sure that I plug my material in to that. Like so. I'll turn size variation up to about 0.5, turn random rotation on. I'll turn cast shadows onto low, so they're always casting shadows. Let's turn the density up to about, I don't know, let's say 6. And then we can start painting some of our objects in and make a big oak tree kind of environment. Like that. So these probably need some more tweaking now that they're in CryEngine. I think actually I could do with adding some more, just generally add some more branches to these and make them a little bit more full. But on the whole, I'm fairly happy with that. So the last thing that you might want to do with this is just to turn the bending on for these so that they kind of sway a bit in the wind. So to do that, just turn in the vegetation, just turn the bending up a bit. So I'd say something like 2, 3, something like that, and you can see that immediately starts to bend and sway a bit in the wind. What you can also do is, if you come into your settings for your branch, just turn detail bending on, and you'll see that kind of makes it shimmer, well, you know, kind of bluster about a bit in the wind. Then you can just mess with the this amplitude setting, these two, to make it sway more or less. So just a little bit, I think, is all we need. You can mess with those settings as much as you want, and that's probably just about enough. Just get rid of that. Okay, so that's it. Trees are finished. Hopefully these tutorials are going to help people a bit with how to go about doing this. You could definitely do loads more work on this now. You could spend some time modelling in some nice roots for the bottom of the tree. You could set up a blend layer on the bark for the tree so that you had kind of areas where moss was growing up the side of it, all that kind of stuff. So I definitely recommend that you play around with it, and you know, see how far you can go with it to make these trees look amazing. So thank you for watching. That's it.